Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am here by myself for the Buckeye roast because the chat was so impatient and wouldn't let me wait for my co-host. So we are here getting the show started early. We got a special guest today, plenty to talk about. Sorry for the delay. The Buckeyes are back off of their bye week. There is a ton to talk about as far as the college football landscape. A lot of the conversation has been about this brutal Big Ten, and it felt like the Buckeyes were going to take back the conference this year, and they do not. It does not look like they have the clearest path to the Big Ten championship game. A lot of teams asserting themselves in the Big Ten this year and decided to be good, so the Buckeyes have a lot to deal with. But we have a special guest on today to talk about all things college football, Big Ten, and otherwise. Our guy, Anand, a player profiler. How you doing?
What up, Ron? Good morning, man. It's we're kind of where we thought we'd be, but also kind of some things haven't gone exactly according to plan. So excited to get into it.
Absolutely. We're going to just start with one of the big topics of the offseason. We have you on not as regular as some other guests. So it's always fun to catch up with you because we always have a little bit of time to see our team and really think about the things that we talked about last time. And one of the big topics last time you were on the show was Will Howard, our questions about him at quarterback taking the helm. And I don't know about you, I have no questions about Will Howard at this moment. He is exactly who we thought he was, if not better than that. The flaws that we knew that he brought to Columbus exist, but he has shown ability to play and make winning plays without throwing the ball down the field on a regular basis. Your thoughts on the addition of Will Howard to this team and your expectations for him coming into this program?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Ohio State fans, us included, were struggling with last year is, anytime you have an Ohio State team, you're going to have talent that is national championship caliber or at minimum Big Ten championship caliber, right? One of the biggest issues we had was there was no stability at quarterback. It seemed like snap to snap, drive to drive, game to game, we would get good games from Kyle McCord, but the moments were occasionally too big. You think back to the drive against Notre Dame is a great example. He threw an interception that was just dropped. That's part of the game, and we have to take it for what it is. But that was something that happened. Will Howard does not care about the last play at all, and I know there are people that kind of want the offense to look a little bit different than it does. They want more vertical pass plays. They want it to look a little bit more explosive, but Will in this run game provides so much stability to the floor of what Ohio State's going to score, even against really, really good teams, and Oregon's a really good team. I don't know what complaints you could possibly have about him at this point, other than that he's not CJ Stroud. And I get it. I understand we had a crazy back-to-back-to-back run with Haskins, Field, and then CJ. But early returns are excellent here. Ohio State profiles as a top 5 offense in America, which is all you can ask for out of a kid that's been here for 9 months now.
Right.
Really, really impressive stuff.
Absolutely. Super impressed with what Will has been able to do. I thought if the Buckeyes did have a loss the next time that we talk, that he would play an integral part in that loss. And I don't think that is the case. I don't think Will Howard was a lot of the reason that the Buckeyes lost to Oregon. Our guy Q is here. He was finished doing his hair this morning. Nice of you to join us.
I got a lot of beef with the chat right now. I'm like, wow, wait a minute. What's going on? How you doing?
What's up, brother? It's funny because we sat here kind of this time last year, and Ohio State didn't have a loss yet. Everything was still in front of them. And somehow, and I don't know if you agree with this, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say. I feel better about this team right now with a loss than I felt about last year's team at the same spot without one.
I slightly disagree there. I would say I feel that this is a better team than we had this time last year, but I feel like their road is just as rocky ahead of them, if that makes sense. While I think
Yeah,
they're more equipped to handle what's in front of them, and I do think they're a better team, I think the challenges ahead of them are steeper than they were for the Buckeyes last year. I mean, outside of Kyle McCord in Michigan, I felt like that was the biggest test. And if they were able to get over that hurdle, I feel like there are landmines all over the college football landscape for this Ohio State team. And like, I feel like Kobe in the finals, where like job's not finished. Like, there's so much ahead of them. I mean, they still have to go to Penn State. They still have an undefeated Indiana on their schedule. They still have to make it to the Big Ten championship. They may have to play a round one playoff game. A lot of things that I don't. It didn't feel like there was anything in front of the Buckeyes other than Michigan. So while I do feel like the team is in a better place as far as talent wise and ability to win, I feel like they have significantly more hurdles than they did at this point last year.
I'd say I'm more on your side. I mean, after Notre Dame last year, I'd sold that this team was going to win a championship. I was like, I don't think we were scoring enough points. We might get there, we might get to the playoffs, but we didn't beat Michigan, and I had no confidence we're going to be able to beat Bama or Georgia, maybe Texas or whoever we saw later down the line. So I had kind of sold. I was like, this is not a championship team. As far as this season goes, I do feel like this team could beat anybody. I mean, there's a lot of parity in college football. Anyone can lose, and we've seen pretty much everybody except Oregon and Penn State lose. So I feel like these are all beatable teams. I understand that Penn State game is a lot more concern going into it than it was last year. So that's a bigger landmine. But I, again, feel like this team can bounce back. At one point, lost to Oregon on the road. Some things to work on, but definitely there's a lot of fixes there. You don't turn the ball over 3 times. You probably don't lose that game. You know what I'm saying? You don't make some mistakes. You probably don't lose that game. So, the chance to get back and going into playoffs, it feels like, yeah, we can beat Georgia. We can beat Texas. We can beat these other teams. They can beat us. But last year, I did not feel like we could beat those teams. So I'm pretty comfortable with the team was right now as long as we are healthy.
I think the other part of it too is you want an early test against a team that can actually push you. Last year's Notre Dame team did not push Ohio State as much as they're a pretty good team, and Ohio State imploded over and over and over again and found a way to win that game. This was a very different result against a team that, again, we highlighted this in the preseason. That's the game that I thought they would lose this year. And sometimes, Saban talked about this not horribly long ago on College Game Day. Sometimes a team that's that talented needs to see themselves bleed. Because if you keep getting away with it, right? Like, let's say Will gets down, they give us a second, you kick the field goal, you walk it off. It's pandemonium. Ohio State's the number 1 team in the country. Nobody cares. All of the stuff that you would want to fix there is going to fall on deaf ears because the team's undefeated. You're going into Penn State now. Nobody's paying attention to this week against Nebraska. But the team, I mean, I think anybody watching this, if you've paid attention to them, Indiana is not just a good team. They might be an elite team. I mean, they are wood chipping people, man. It's a top 5 offense in the country. It's a top 10 defense in the country. They're really, really good. And I know that anybody that's an Ohio State fan that's kind of a casual is going to sit there and say, oh, it's Indiana, we'll be fine. Do not forget that Michael Penix Jr. a few years ago had them on the doorstep, and this team is infinitely better than that one. Like, it's going to be a dogfight every single week because everyone's heard the chatter that was going around the Woody. When you hear natty or bust, that's the expectation. You're going to get every team's natty shot. Indiana's biggest game on their schedule right now is Ohio State. Penn State's biggest game on their schedule is Ohio State. You don't think Michigan's going to get up for Michigan, Ohio State? You're going to get those 3 teams' best shots, not to mention Nebraska this week. That's the expectation when you come to Ohio State. But all of these teams, other than Michigan, are significantly better than we thought they'd be. And that's why, to Ron's point, I think when you look at what this team can be, maybe that loss helps them in terms of reframing. Yeah, you do get a mulligan in a 12-team playoff era. You do. But now it's on you. There's no more margin for error. If you want to win a Big Ten title, if you want to win a national title, you might be able to lose again. But if you want to check off every goal that was on your list, being undefeated was cool. You want to win a Big Ten title and you want to win a national title. And you have to beat Michigan this year no matter what. Penn State Nebraska, Indiana, yes, everybody's going to go up in arms if they don't win those games. But you have to beat Michigan this year. I'm looking at Ron's face, and he's like, do not tell me that we're going to be a 10-2 playoff team. But I'm telling you, if they lose that game, all hell will break loose.
If they're I don't think they'll be a 10-2 playoff team. If they lose 2 games and don't make the Big Ten championship game, I don't even want to go there. But I want to talk about I want to talk about the current state of this Buckeye team, because while I do feel like the Buckeyes have everything to play ahead of them, the message that I sent you when I asked you to come on the show was, hey, Buckeye Nation's not happy with me. Talk me off the ledge. I'm being too negative for them. It happens this time every year when most people don't get on camera and criticize this team. They do it on the timeline. Most people that get on camera and talk about this team are pretty objective, pretty fair. Don't criticize them overly and keep a measured approach. Me, I'm a fan. Like, I see this shit for what it is. And I'm just struggling right now with, we just talked about how much harder the Buckeyes path is right now than it was in previous years. We lose our left tackle. We have questions on defense. We don't know who our starting strong safety is. How are Buckeye fans sleeping at night knowing what task is ahead of them as far as the goals that they set for this season and the losses that they just took, not only on the field to Oregon, but for the rest of the season, potentially, well, definitely at one position, and we're still waiting on word at another?
The Josh Simmons injury was one of the very few spots in this roster that they couldn't afford to lose. So the problem here is Zen is going to have to take over there, and he's going to have to be really good. There's no way to kind of hide your left tackle against the teams that we're going to have to play. Abdul Carter at Penn State's one. We know what Michigan's defensive interior looks like. You get to a Texas, a Georgia, a Bama, and Oregon again. We know what their edge rushers and interior D linemen look like. There's no plan B. There is no option. We knew this going into the season. Tackle depth was a problem. Someone has to step up there. And I think it's Zen. And I mean, to his credit, the rest of that game, he played really well. He did have the one penalty, but other than that, you didn't really see him get beat that often, which against the caliber of players they were playing at Oregon, that's a huge deal in that environment. The defense is a different problem. It's time. Every Buckeye fan, I'm giving you a little bit of homework. I need you to go watch Texas, Georgia in its entirety. I need you to go watch. Quinn Ewers is a really good Power 4 quarterback. NFL, we can discuss later. But as a P4 QB, he's very good. He's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in America. Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann had him totally flustered for 4 hours. He had no idea where pressure was coming from. He had no idea who was dropping. That is a really, really good quarterback that looked like he did not belong on that field that night. If you go back and watch what Knowles did at Oklahoma State, it was all kinds of exotic fronts. It was not just 4-down linemen rushing. Yes, we've had the argument about whether or not Ohio State needs a jack. Can we recruit one? Can we put someone there? I don't care. You have enough talented teams to try out what you want to try out here. I'm not saying that it would have mattered against Western Michigan and Akron, but against Nebraska and Penn State and Michigan, it absolutely will. And if you want to get back to a Big Ten title game against an Oregon, if you want to win a national title, beating a Texas, beating a Georgia, you are going to have to do something different, because at this point, they're not good enough yet. They're not good enough. There is no Chase Young. There is no Nick Bosa. And I think as good as Jack Sawyer has been, and as much as JTT got doubled in that Oregon game, somebody's got to find a way to actually get pressure against really good offensive lines. They've got to try something. It's time. The Larry Johnson 4-down, we're just going to rush the quarterback like it's 1995. That experiment needs to be over against good teams. I mean, if you want to do that against Michigan State, be my guest. But against really good teams, no shot. I think you need to get into some of the exotic looks that he did at Oklahoma State, some of the stuff that Georgia's doing. And I mean, even some of the stuff that Texas is doing. You're watching defenses get to kind of play offense and dictate to the offenses what they're allowed to do. It's time for Ohio State with that kind of talent profile to take that approach. We will lose. Straight up, go full 2022. If we lose being aggressive, so be it. Do not die standing still.
I agree with you there. I want to follow stuff. So we've had this talk this week and last week, and had a few conversations, and I brought up guys like James Pierce, who let me put his profile. He's 6'5", 240. I wonder what position that profile fits. Different guys like that. Jalen Walker. Obviously, Larry Johnson's guys do not have what it takes to go get pressure in a 4-down front. I mean, we just see it against one of the best teams against Oregon, and they were basically non-existent. There was no pressure. Dylan Gabriel had all day back there to throw. I would ask you, let's say we hired you a defense coordinator today and say, go out there, give me some pressure. Where do you go? Because we've talked about these guys, CJ Hicks, talked about Sonny Styles, and we talked about, maybe for their careers, we need to have them rush the passer. Heck, maybe for this Ohio State team, we need to have them rush the passer for their sake and not the players' sake. Where do you go to get pressure on this team, because it has been non-existent, and you're like, we don't have Mikael Williams on this squad?
I think you brought up a really good name, and Ohio State fans have tried to do this. Whether you're a film guy, whether you're just a fan, we have been trying to find a spot for Sonny Styles for so long. It's very reminiscent of Isaiah Simmons at Clemson, where you're just like, he's a ball player, he needs to be out there, but where do we put him? I think at this point, if you want to let him quarterback hunt, let him quarterback hunt. Let him play pseudo edge, jack, whatever you want to call it. Because Ohio State's problem is not playing against the Michigans of the world, right? That's where the dam's broken the last couple of years. But if you watch what CJ had to do against Georgia, you got the performance of a lifetime. Asking your quarterback to do that sustainably, especially over a 12-team playoff era where you might have to win 3 or 4 games. I just don't think that that's realistic. You need your defense to be able to go get turnovers, to get sacks. Advanced stats-wise, a sack is worth about half a turnover, give or take. And so I think when you look at this team and you're trying to figure out what is the problem, Denzel Burke had an awful day. I think we know that. You can chalk that up as he sucks. You can chalk that up as he had one really, really bad day. But that really, really bad day is attached to your name forever. I say the name Isaiah Prince. What game do you go to? You know immediately, right? It's that game is attached to your name forever. So, I mean, first-round NFL corner, he's looked very, very good outside of that, but it's hard to ignore that. And it's, something that teams are going to continue to attack until he proves on film that he's all the way back and is still that dude. Obviously rooting for him. I was surprised that they didn't throw in Jermaine Matthews. I was surprised that they didn't try other exotic blitz looks, whether that's fire zone, whether that's we're going 5 down or double mug in the A gap. However it is that you wanted to bring that pressure or at least simulate it. That's a common term that you'll hear, stem pressure, where you're still only rushing 4, but you have no idea where those 4 are coming from. It's time. It's time to get out of the static, we're just going to play base sets and our guys are better than your guys. They are. I'm not saying that they're not, but the game's kind of evolved past that.
I'm sorry. I have to quibble with a comment that I've been hearing for a while, and I feel like I've seen enough of them that I don't think it's a fair comparison. Sonny Styles is not Isaiah Simmons. He does not run a 4.3.
It's the role.
It's not even close. He probably runs a closer 40 to Still Chambers than Isaiah Simmons. He's not slow, but he's not 4.3 fast. And the idea that he's out there running a force, he's running sideline to sideline like Ryan Shazier, I feel like is a fallacy. Is he an athletic linebacker? Is he more athletic than Still Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg? Yes. Is he the freak athlete that Isaiah Simmons is? I have not seen it. Have you seen 4.3 speed? It's not so much
that. It's that Isaiah Simmons was the kind of player. So anytime you have someone that's that talented physically, right, your biggest problem is that they, in theory, can do everything. And if you ask them to try to do everything, some guys that maximizes their potential, other guys that totally strips it. So it's one of those cases where I don't think that he can do everything at this level. You need to find a spot for him. It's not one of those Isaiah Simmons comparisons where, hey, we can ask Isaiah to do anything. That's not where I'm going here.
No, but I
When
feel
he
I'm
was
not
when
you
he's at his best,
specifically, but I feel like there's a lot of people out there that like have heard that phrase over and over and over again, and they're like, they're waiting for it, and I'm like, I don't think
no,
that's what you're ever going to see because like,
he's
go
he's
ahead.
basically an edge rusher to me. Sonny's natural position is probably outside linebacker in a 3-4. Like if you're
Again,
really, really, really dialing it down up a level. Um, but we're not running a 3-4. So you have to find ways to use him in what we do. And I think that, if you want to put his hand in the dirt and basically turn him into an edge rusher, that's fine. I know Mark Givler's suggested that we do that for a long time, even back when he was in high school. But, just going back to something that you said earlier, asking about safety, I'm very excited to see what Lorenzo Styles does in place of Lathan Ransom. I mean, we haven't seen him. It's one thing when you have depth, right? That's a position, for example, right? Ransom's an awesome player, but Ohio State has some depth there. You're okay. Corner, we have some depth there. There's edge rusher depth. The problem with losing Simmons for me specifically is there is no tackle depth. And so somebody's just going to have to step up there. Whereas at all of these other positions where you're like, oh, man, we have an injury here or an injury there, they don't really scare me. But, defensively speaking specifically, something has to change.
so you talk about the depth. That's the next thing that I wanted to get into. Safety. Rumors all over the place about speculation around Lathan Ransom's availability. I went to the snap count to see our safeties because we applauded this. We applauded this staff because we felt like they were changing. They were turning a new leaf. They were going to be able to get guys in the game and ready for an issue like this if we have an injury. Our starting safety so far this year, 307 snaps for Caleb Downs, 304 snaps for Lathan Ransom. The next most snaps by a safety on the Ohio State team is over under 160 snaps. Q.
No, definitely under. Do it.
On it?
If you said
under
80, I would have said under.
Yeah.
The next closest in snaps would be Jalen McClain and Malik Harford, who are tied for the exact same amount of snaps at 47.
There we go. I was like, am I crazy? I'd be under if you said 50.
The depth on this team is strange, just because nobody's ever really constructed a roster like this, especially not in Columbus. But, you're trying to blend the youth with the experience here. You've got a quarterback in Howard that's seen it all, done it all. It's why, late game brain fart on the last drive aside, that environment in Oregon didn't really bother him. And you can tell, he's been there forever. He's done it several times, won a Big 12 championship at Kansas State, beat the TCU team that went to the national title. Everybody forgets about that. That's going to be like the most forgotten championship win ever. Because everybody still in their head thinks TCU won that game. But I think when you look at, the youth on this team, where do you find the spots to play them? The Western Michigans and the Akrons on your schedule are gone. And we obviously talked about that before where we're like, you need to find a spot for these guys to get in there. We need to see Julian Sand. We need to see, James Peoples. We need to see all of these guys, and defensively especially, in that defensive backfield, they just didn't get in there often enough. You obviously hope that no injury happens, but, you can afford an injury at a spot or two. Everybody's going to have them, no matter who you are, no matter how good you are. But, now we're to the point where you need Lorenzo Styles to step up here. And how many snaps is he taking this year?
Lorenzo Styles has played. Oh, man, sorry. That's the offense. Defense, Lorenzo Styles is at 42.
His 43rd snap's going to be pretty damn important if it's on Saturday.
And, like, Lorenzo Styles, like that again, how confident are you? I mean, in a scenario where Lorenzo Styles plays more, that means Jordan Hancock's moving to safety.
Yeah,
We're
I
talking
mean,
we're talking about not getting young guys reps. We're moving a guy to play a safety position he's never played at Ohio State.
yeah, I mean, you're looking at all kinds of moves in that defensive backfield. If Lathan can't go, because right, going back to our structure problem, playing base defense is not the way that you're going to dictate to offenses what they can and can't do. They're going to get a real test this week. I know Ohio State fans don't really care about Nebraska. It's like, oh, it's Nebraska. They're on our schedule. No.
I do. And again, I feel like Ohio State fans need to look in the mirror because there's a lot of Ohio State fans that think these are still, I don't know what teams they think they are, but like these infallible Ohio State teams are not in Columbus
The
anymore.
era of
Like,
the era of Urban Meyer walking in the door and getting to 11 wins by showing up and running dive 45 times or over. That's just not what the Big Ten is anymore. Nebraska is running an NFL dropback game. They're asking Dylan Raiola at 18 years old to play NFL quarterback. For reference, Jackson Dart has never played NFL quarterback at the college level at all. The offense does all the lifting for him. Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee has not had to play NFL dropback QB yet. The offense does a lot of the heavy lifting for him. What Dylan Raiola can do is make every single throw that you need to make on Sundays. Now, he's young. He's inexperienced at this level. There are going to be some throws that he's going to leave in places where you can get to him. But this is a real challenge. They're not – this is not the Nebraska of old, man. Like, this is a good football team. Indiana put them in a blender last week. So if I'm telling you I think Nebraska is a pretty good team and Indiana beat them by, 40? I mean, you're talking about drastically different teams that, this is not 2013 Nebraska and Indiana anymore. These are really good football teams, and they're going to get tested. And Ohio State's going to need that depth, which is why earlier in the season we were complaining over and over again about, hey, we should probably sub in some linebackers. Hey, we should probably sub in some safeties. We might need the young guys at corner to get a little bit more run. Hey, what does that defensive line rotation look like? How do our tackles look outside of 1 and 2? Now we're going to see just how much they did behind the scenes because, again, obviously we can only see what we see on Saturdays. But, I have faith that some of those young guys will step up. But I'm very interested to see what they do in the DB room if Ransom doesn't go because there isn't just a plug-and-play solution for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like the secondary is really the big concern here because I feel like, I don't know. Lorenzo Styles, I think he has played well when he's come up. I don't know if he's necessarily a guy where I'm like, I got to move Jordan Hancock and get this guy on the field and roll with that. I'm like, we got 3 safeties in this program that we all feel like can play. They haven't maybe shown it, but they're still going to line up next to Caleb Downs and Jordan Hancock and Denzel Burke and IGB and go, and I think they would be just fine. So that's not necessarily – and now Ransom not being back for the long term, yeah, I'll have some concern there. Line up against Nebraska this weekend, I don't feel like that'll really get exploited like that. I think more the concern in this defense is going to be in that front, I guess front 6, not really front 7, and seeing what they do there. And I feel like there may be some answers in there. Like, again, why Arvell Reese is not linebacker number 1 and we fit everybody around him. I will continue to ask that question to the end of the season. But also, too, where are we getting this pass rush from? Are things going to change? We're going to try the same thing and see how it fails. But I'm confident enough in this secondary where I feel like it can carry the front 6 here, and we can go and figure it out down the line. Penn State will be important. And then going to the offensive side, yeah, Josh Simmons is out. That's something we really couldn't afford, but also, too, I feel like the team played really well, especially when you watch the film going to Oregon. Understand you made some mistakes. You can't fumble the ball, can't do the turnover things. But, you got to play disciplined football. No matter what you do, if you don't play disciplined football, have missed assignments, guys running wide open and fumbling the ball, you'll find ways to lose regardless. I feel like this Indiana team is going to be really good, and maybe that'll be a slight test. And then going into Penn State, obviously, I think that's the one So I still feel like I have pretty good confidence here. I don't know if it's necessarily hit the red button. I know I know Ron over there has felt like hit the red button, since that loss, but also too, I mean, I don't think anybody else is as good as Oregon. I'm gonna be honest. In the Big Ten, I don't. I feel like Penn State is a losable game because one, it's Penn State, and I think they might be slightly inflated, but we will see when we go there. But also, too, I think Indiana's really good. But if we lose Indiana, we ain't go to a national championship anyway.
See, and my red button isn't panic or throw the team away or throw the season away. It's fucking set the alarm because clearly no one wants to wake up. Ryan Day doesn't want to wake up. The fan base doesn't want to wake up. We're getting bitched at in the chat because we have Ohio State has a rocky road to the Big Ten championship. We just lost our starting left tackle, our starting strong safety, our defensive line coach and defensive coordinator hate each other. And we have 2 undefeated teams remaining on our schedule and no guarantee into the Big Ten championship. And people are mad for calling it a rocky road. Like, everybody just wants sunshines and rainbows and wants to be told that they're special because they're an Ohio State fan. Like, yeah, do we have a great team? Do we have a ton of talent? Yes. Is it a guarantee that they accomplish everything? No. Do they have issues in front of them? Yes. And let me know in the chat. What do you guys want us to get up here and say? Will Howard's the fucking best. We have the greatest running backs ever. We have so much depth that losing a starting left tackle that's going to be an NFL draft pick, that doesn't impact us at all. Lathan Ransom, we celebrated him coming back, but it's honestly not a big deal because we have so much depth. We're not going to miss him either. Jim Knowles has given up 30 plus points in every big game. No worries. We don't play any more big games this year. What do you guys want said about this team right now? Because I'm at a loss because what is there to say? Oh, we're going to beat Nebraska. Everything's fine. I've watched this team struggle and show flaws early in the season, and everyone writes them off and then is confused at the end of the season when they're sitting at home, not playing for a national title. Everybody convinced themselves that fucking Matt Barnes fixed our defense. Buckeye fans are so willing to fucking consume anyone that tells them that their team is great that they believe that Matt Barnes had shit fixed until Michigan came and punched us right in the fucking mouth. Like, this idea that you can't criticize this team when I get they lost by 1 point. They lost by 1 point to a team that wasn't playing their best defender. Their second leading wide receiver decided to spit on someone in the first quarter. And Ohio State doesn't have 2 starters now. We're down 2 starters, and they get 2 starters back. What makes you believe that puts Ohio State in a better chance to win? You think the home field advantage is that much of an advantage that losing 2 starters and adding 2 to their team? Like, I get that Ohio State didn't play their best game. Neither did Oregon. And the rest took an interception away from them that gave the Buckeyes points on their very first drive. Cool. 1 point loss. If you guys want to hang your hat on that, fine. But this idea that there's nothing to talk about or there's no issues ahead of this Ohio State team, I'm at a loss. I went out and got on it for the show, assuming that the fan base would be excited to see someone that is less hyperbolic than me give you guys measured analysis, and that's still not good enough. So I don't know who the hell we're going to get on this show to appease some people in this team. I mean, maybe we need I don't know. I truly don't know who can tell them and satiate this need to be told that, hey, you're the team that you thought they were. Because
their talent covers a lot of things, right? And Ohio State, the last few years, has gotten away with being a very talented team in big spots. Notre Dame, great example, right? Last year. They got away with just being the more talented team, which is fine. You know, that is the way that Ohio State can win 85, 90% of the games that they play. The difference is this year, it's the difference in styles that they're going to have to win, right? Nebraska, really good defense, NFL quarterback, you know, kind of for a long time. They remind me a lot of the Kirk Cousins Michigan State teams. And I think Raiola is significantly more talented. But that's kind of the profile of what Nebraska is right now. You then go to Indiana, which looks like an offensive and defensive juggernaut. they're probably, objectively speaking, a top 10 team in the country right now. And I know nobody saw that coming. So it's just, oh, we're going to wait until they lose a game and shit all over them. No, that is a very, very good team that is absolutely capable of beating Ohio State. I'm very interested to see what that line opens at. Then the other one, obviously Penn State, we can talk forever about how good that team is and how much better they are. I know there are a lot of Ohio State fans that just won't believe that Penn State is any good until we lose to them at some point, which is fine. I get it. There have been many close escapes against Penn State over the years. They're a really good football team. Everybody wants to talk about Michigan, and they should. I get it. That's the game that you have to win no matter what every single year. Here's the problem. They're going to get up for that game. I know you think they're 40 points better. I'm sure they think they're 40 points better, but they will absolutely get up for that game. And so now you're looking at 4 games on your schedule that you are going to get real puncher shots of teams that can knock you off in. And that's just to get back to Oregon in the Big Ten title game. And then you got to deal with potentially Oregon again and Texas and Georgia. It's not an easy path. I'm not saying that they can't do it. They obviously can do it. Anybody that can go into Oregon, play their B- game and get within 1 point of beating a top 3 team in the country is a very good team that absolutely can win a national title. It's just the consistency in these big games has to change. And those drives have to end in field goals and touchdowns, not with us hand in heart saying, oh, shit, we needed 5 more seconds again.
And that's all I've been trying to convey this week is, hey, the Buckeyes are still a very good team, but they have more questions coming out of that game than they did going in. So I don't understand how everybody can be so confident and certain that this team is going to correct and address all of these things. All I'm doing is presenting, hey, we lost our left tackle. Hey, we lost our strong safety. Hey, we're still trying to figure out things as far as a pass rush. Like, we have not figured it all out. I mean, we could say the exact opposite. I mean, could Will Howard play an even better game? Could we see a better rushing performance? Could we see better play calling from Chip Kelly that makes this offense more dynamic? Can we see less penalties? Can we play a game where it's not as loud as an environment and in a neutral site, the Buckeyes are going to be, fingers crossed, take less pre-snap penalties? All of those things are still on the table, but closing our eyes and pretending like we don't see what we've seen so far and not discuss this team going forward with the flaws that we've seen. I said going into the Oregon game, we might need to cut the show down to 3 days a week because there's not shit to talk about. Like, they are going out there. It's the same people going to put belt to ass that we've been watching on that defense now for 3 years, it feels like. The offense, I mean, it's absolutely humming that James Peoples is playing the second half of games. Like, the team is rolling. They look infallible. Like, I can come on here and tell you that they're amazing every day, and then they lose a game. We're talking about the flaws that they have. No one wants to hear that. I'm honestly in a blender right now because it feels like anything that we say on this show, the Buckeyes are good, people bitch. The Buckeyes are bad, people bitch. I'm just like, fuck, I can sleep.
There are 4 teams that can win a title. To me, there are 4 teams that can win a title. It's the same 4 that we've looked at in the preseason. It's Georgia, it's Texas, it's Ohio State, Oregon. One of those 4 are your national champion. They have everything in front of them. If they get it together and put it all together, they will win a national title this year. But it's on them to do that. There are defensive changes that need to be made, and I think you need to find out what you have at left tackle now that Simmons is gone. Those are really your big questions.
Exactly, and I mean, you see Gmo in the chat, and I guess that's what everybody wants us to be. Like, he just said, what? Miami 2 full? Like, no. I mean, if you guys want to be undefeated with a fucking fake team that you want to pretend is going to win a national championship so you get your fucking doors blown in the playoffs, fine by me. But I mean, if you think that Miami is in a better situation than Ohio State currently, even with all of the negativity that we just discussed and how difficult their path is to the championship, you could add 3 more undefeated teams to Ohio State's schedule and they'd still have a better chance of winning a national championship than that Miami team. They cannot fucking tackle air at this point. So if you think that Cam Ward is going to be able to play a top defense in the country with that level of physicality and pass rush that you would see from a playoff team without making mistakes, and their defense is going to hold someone under 35. Good fucking luck, man. Good luck. I am 2 minutes late for a call queue. I got to jump. You got to get us out of here.
All right, will do. We can let y'all. I'll give you a minute to wrap up. So we go down the stretch here. Ron jumps off. We go down the stretch here. Are you confident down the line? All right, I understand. Going to Penn State is going to be a rough game. That's probably my biggest concern right now for the Big Ten championship. But going down the line here, do you feel like Ohio State gets these things fixed, or do you feel like you have confidence in there? I mean, we've seen every team now. You said 4 teams can win a national championship. I think the only real big concern, they're all concerns, is we've needed a first-round quarterback to make it out of Penn State every time we've gone there with a win. I mean, hell, we had C.J. Stroud and Marv, and JT had to have, I don't know if he took Compound B before the game, but he had to have the game of legends just to leave there with a win. Do you feel like Ohio State rights the ship and gets back to the Big Ten championship? And do you feel like this team is still national championship worthy?
Yeah, I think, the Simmons injury does change some things. If you look at, we talked about Michigan last year. You get another eighth of a second from McCord. He hits Marv on that dig. That's not a pick. That drive continues. You potentially win that game, and then who knows? I think that before the season, I had Ohio State, Texas, and Ohio State winning the national title. I did not have them winning last year. And the reason I didn't have them winning last year is I just thought Georgia's defense was too good. And Alabama, again, like they always do, knocked them off for us. It's somewhat poetic. Ohio State, in order to win a national title, has always had to beat the actual best team in the country to do it. Right? In 2019, lost to Clemson, but they would have had to beat LSU. In 2020, it was clear Bama was the best team. They had to beat Bama. They didn't. 2022, you look at Georgia, had to beat Georgia, didn't do it. Last year, Michigan had to beat Michigan, didn't do it. I think this year they're having that foursome at the top as a cluster. I think they match up well with Oregon. I don't think they played their best game. I think if you play that game 10 times on a neutral field, Ohio State wins 6 or 7 of them. Texas is probably a coin flip for me. Georgia is horrifying. That is, you're talking about the stuff that they did on defense to a really good Texas team. I mean, Texas, I think, had the best O-line in the country, or at least it looked like it to that point, and they were thoroughly outclassed. I think if I still had it to pick, I would still go Ohio State, Texas. I think that's a one-score game in a national title, and anytime you have a game that's that close, picking a winner is kind of ridiculous because, it's one tipped ball, it's one special teams play. And we just watched it against Oregon. You have 2 really good teams. It was an interception that wasn't called for them. That's 7 points off the board. The onside kick that Ohio State wasn't ready for. That's another 7 points off the board. And the other side, you have the Quinshawn fumble. Just a lot of weirdness and randomness that goes on in a football game that you can't really prepare for or quantify in advance. But if it's up to me, if I'm still picking, if it's my money's down on one or the other, I think Ohio State just has a little bit more talent than Texas does, and that'll get them there. But it's only if the defense can hold its end of the bargain, because right now the scary part is, and every Ohio State fan has it deep in the back of your mind, late in a game, if the defense has to win a game, you are going to think about what happened against Oregon. And I hope those kids don't think it, because they're way better than they played that night, especially Denzel Burke. But look, first round pick after first round pick all across that defense, multiple NFL players on the offense. We know how explosive the wide receivers, running backs are. It's just time to put it all together. And, I'm not going full Ron where I'm ready to hit the red button and declare the season over. It's just, you now need your depth pieces to be reliable, because you're going to have more injuries as you play really good teams. This isn't Western Michigan and Akron where we can just kind of assume they're going to get out there 56-0 in the third quarter and we can call the dogs off and all go home. I think so much of this team and what it can be will be, kind of revealed at Penn State and Indiana. by the time we get to Michigan, we're going to know what this team is. That's not going to be like last year where there's just a bunch of zeros on the schedule between Notre Dame and Michigan. But I think that if everything breaks right for this team, for the people that want the sunshine, if everything breaks right for this team, if they figure these things out week by week against really good teams, they're going to be very battle tested by the time they get to a Big Ten championship game in a playoff. And those situations that, against Georgia felt like huge, against Oregon felt huge, against Notre Dame feel huge, Michigan, same thing. Those scenarios will feel much more normal to them, especially the younger guys. You look at like a Jeremiah Smith, who's a one of one, total unicorn. He just hasn't had those moments on stages like this yet. And obviously he's responded extremely well to the situations we have put him in. But you're looking for the Garrett Wilson catch against Clemson where, true freshman, awesome all year long. And then in that big moment, he absolutely arrives on the big stage. So I'm excited to watch them down the stretch. I do still think this is a national championship team. They would be my favorite to win the national title right now. It's very close between them and Texas, Georgia. But I don't think that the issues against Oregon are indicative of a bigger problem. They're just something to note for down the line.
Yeah, I would agree there. We'll know a lot definitely in the next 2-3 weeks here with this ball club. I mean, right now I would favor them as well. It'll be a toss-up game in the Final Fours, as we know, like you said. But if we can get past this Penn State game, if I see an improvement in this pass rush, and obviously we know too, Ryan Day's ball clubs always show up. That's the one thing we gave him credit for. They don't sleepwalk into these games. They show up and they handle business. And even the big time games, they have showed up and played. We just got to either find a way to make somebody putt in the fourth quarter or find a way to score more than 3 points in the fourth quarter. And we will do just that. But hey, man, appreciate catching up with you again. It's been a little minute. How's the content going? Let people know where they can find you, what you're talking about on the daily. Let them go to let them know.
Yeah, so it's at Andrew NFL on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I have to change his names, God knows how many times. But over at Player Profiler, we're kind of trying to extrapolate college stats into NFL stats, and that's one of the things that we do, where we're trying to profile receivers at their breakout ages and running backs and quarterbacks and tight ends and how they kind of fit in at the next level, because what you're asked to do in college and what you're asked to do in the pros can be the same, but most of the time it's pretty different. We have a lot of fun talking about that with Matt Kelly on Decision Point on the Player Profiler Network. So every so often I'm on there, few and far between lately, but excited to get back into it in the off season because as you know, man, October, November, December, January, it just don't stop.
No, it does not. And these college football Saturdays keep getting crazier and crazier as we've had a great season here. I want to appreciate everybody in the chat coming through. Y'all were booming today. My fault. I had to box with my internet at 5 a.m. here, but we got it back rolling. So appreciate y'all. We'll be back tomorrow. We got Mike in here tomorrow as well. So a lot of talk about big time game this weekend and no room for error going forward. So as long as Ohio State goes out and plays well, we'll lower Ron's blood pressure day by day. Appreciate everyone joining us. We're going to go ahead and get out of here, but make sure to like that video, retweet and stuff on Twitter like that, hit over in the community, and everybody do your best Doreen impression. Go ahead and share it on the timeline. Hit that retweet button, all that good stuff. But you know how this goes. We're going to get out of here. Go Bucks and OH.
I hope, brother.
And I got to find the video. It's not where I thought it was. No, it moved. I can't find this thing.
Yeah.